I'm here with the legend, the wonderful, friendly man, Dr. Richard Scott. Hello.
Andy, don't big me up too much. The pressure's simply too great. But thank you for that nice introduction.
It's fine. Dr. Richard Scott, GP or family practitioner, joins me every week here on the Get Your Home Show, and we talk about topical health issues. Sometimes we'll also do some quick fire questions to the doctor. And if you're thinking, well, what sort of questions could I ask? It's the kind of thing, this is wherever you are in the world, you might have a different name for this, but Richard is the sort of person you go to first. It'd be your local family doctor. Would that be about right?
Spot on.
Cool. Right. Now, last time we spoke on cold water plunges. You and I had our own thoughts of, okay, others can do it, that's fine. And I know you've got some other stuff, and we've got some comments on that as well. But do you want to start us off? Because you were looking at the health benefits of it. Is it good? Is it bad last time? And this time you've looked at some of the other side of it.
Yes, I thought. I mean, just to very briefly mention from last time, when we went through it, I realised in my studying that that cold dips have been around for many thousands of years, and lots of different cultures, from the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, up to the present day. That's the sort of history, and therefore there seems to be something in it over the long course of time that's been recognised. And modern day science spotted that there's physical benefits and there's mental benefits. So physically, it reduces inflammation, muscle soreness, which is why top athletes, the Andy Murrays of this world and others, have these cold dips after exercise. Helps us fight infection, helps our metabolism. Mentally, and this is interesting, from raising our endorphins, dopamine, adrenaline, the sort of feel-good hormones. What it is that raises it, it's a sudden shock to the system, as you can imagine, jumping in cold water or even just reducing the cold in the shower. It's a shock to the system, and bang, the hormones get going, the fight or flight response. But that seems to be good for us, generally speaking. It increases our focus, our concentration, our alertness. So it's good, generally speaking. However, I did think this week, well, I'll just have a quick look, what might be the bad effects of cold water dips. So anyone who if you want to go into anything in life, you need to know the good side and the bad side. So I looked into it, and there are a few bad effects, particularly if you've got heart disease. So the overall recommendation is, if you have heart disease, this is not for you. Stick to gentle exercise, stick to what your doctor says, take your pills, walk a bit more, etc. But don't. The cold water dips seem to be a bad idea. Why? Well, in this fight and flight response, with your adrenaline going berserk, up goes your heart rate, up goes your blood pressure, up goes your respiratory rate. Now, if you've already got a raised blood pressure, that's not such a good thing. And this is it's a stress on the heart, which, if your heart is already stressed, may not be good for you. And, for example, somebody with heart disease who suddenly decides to go underwater in really cold water, if you get this rise in heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, you can develop what's called a cold shock response, where you suddenly gasp. Now, if you're underwater and you gasp, a bad idea. In goes cold water, and that can lead to your rapid demise. So I don't want to be too negative here, but if you've got heart disease, this is not a smart thing to do. Certainly, if people do it too long. Do you remember last time we said, well, maybe start off for a minute, maximum of 2 minutes, not every day. Perhaps 11 minutes the studies seem to show in a week, 11 minutes in a week. So it's not a huge amount. Maybe a couple of minutes, maybe 3 minutes, times 4 times a week. That's the sort of max that's recommended. It helps burn off fat as well. It seems to be good. Helps people sleep. But if you do it for too long, clearly you can get frostbite. Not a good idea. As we mentioned with heart disease, various problems. But if you're unlucky and do it for too long, well, arrhythmia, so that's an unusual heart rate, something that, Andy, you yourself have been aware of.
Yes.
That might give you a get-out clause.
Yay.
But arrhythmias, even heart attacks, if you do it for too long. So it's meant to be a short, sharp shock to people who don't have heart disease. Yes, do it too long, frostbite, hypothermia. Clearly, if you do it too long, well, you can, your body can no longer cope. Actually, remember what happens when you get very cold is the blood is shunted to the center of the body to protect the vital organs. But if that's the case and you're in a really cold river, your arms and legs, therefore the peripheries, have less blood supply. You can't move them as well. You can't swim as well. So you just need to look after yourself. Be careful. Anybody who's fancying doing this, there are of course benefits, but you don't want to get cold shock. You can get cramps if you're unlucky, and then again your arms and legs don't work. Which is why if you're cold swimming, you never do this alone. A bit like people shouldn't climb mountains alone. It's just dumb. If you suddenly break a leg or sprain an ankle, you need help. Don't cold water swim on your own. It's just not smart. So I think there are many benefits, both physically and mentally. But sensible advice, and the studies show, don't do it if you've got heart disease. Don't cold water swim on your own. There are things that can go wrong. So be kind to yourself. Go for the benefits and try and avoid the dangers if possible.
Yes, I'm still stumped after the last one. I love this topic, cold water plunges. When we talk about issues of the heart, can you just give us some examples that people might associate with those heart conditions that would quite potentially preclude us from doing this?
And I think I mentioned one, which is high blood pressure.
Yeah.
If you've already got a cardiac arrhythmia, so your heart isn't running smoothly, your rhythm isn't normal, then bearing in mind a cold dip can trigger arrhythmias. That wouldn't be smart. So I think if you've got, bearing in mind it could also cause heart attacks. If you've got furred up coronary arteries to start with, you get angina, you get chest pain on exercise, then again, this is probably not for you. We're in the business of keeping people alive longer, not shortening their life. That's not smart. You don't go to a doctor asking, how can I shorten my life? You go hopefully trying to lengthen it. So I think you've got pre-existing heart disease, heart arrhythmias, angina, high blood pressure. Not for you.
Cool. Okay. I have had 2 episodes of atrial fibrillation, quite a few years apart, quite a few years ago. So I think I'm good. I can't do this. I'm okay with that.
Think you can cross this one off.
That's fine by me. However, someone did get in touch and said, I listened to the interview with Richard. I really, really want to try it, but I'm really struggling to get, it's basically the mind issue of how can I possibly finish exercise and warm down, but using cold. So I think there was that kind of that mental disconnect of.
Well, I looked into this one actually. It's interesting because certainly you can do your exercise then whether it's slowly bring down the shower or a very brief, very cold dip. What you then need to do is make sure you warm up again afterwards. I don't mean exercise, but I mean get warm quickly. So this is a cold, short, sharp shock, which liberates your adrenaline, makes you feel better, reduces inflammation and soreness. But once you've done it, you then need to warm up again. Whether it's going back into a warm shower or just simply toweling yourself down, making sure you get your clothes on afterwards. So do warm up again afterwards, or at least I should phrase that differently. Get warm afterwards, because it's meant to be a short shock, not a prolonged one.
We were chatting about this as a family before, and we the general consensus was maybe we'd like to try it one day, but can we try it when it's hotter?
Sure, try it. Again, this is meant to work. I think these things are meant to work for us, not against us.
Yeah.
Yes, it's worth a go. And I personally would start gently. It's a bit like you don't in a gym. You don't suddenly turn yourself into Arnold Schwarzenegger. You go up through the gears, don't you? And I think that's important, especially for something like this that seems unnatural. Let's do it slowly and gently.
Right. We have a different comment, which is actually a positive one. So this is from someone in the USA. I was a sweaty mess after shoveling snow. It was so hot, so I decided to take a cold shower to see if it would help my aching back, shoulders, neck. And I actually do feel better. Still sore, but not as bad. And then they reference how they've used ice packs in certain points. I always used to do a cold water finish, and I enjoyed it. I think I'm going to start doing it again.
Well, that's very positive. You're quite right about an ice pack. Say you sprain your ankle, it's swelling, quickly get the ice on. We know it reduces swelling, it reduces inflammation, and you recover quicker. I remember doing a very dumb thing where I slipped down a step towards my house a few years ago on a cold wet day, banged my shin. I thought, oh, that's just a bit sore. and ignored it. And a few hours later, I thought, goodness me, that's sore. Lifted up my trouser leg, a massive hematoma, just a huge swelling. And I was thinking, goodness, you should have taken that more seriously. You should have got the ice on. That's what you would have told someone to do. Try it yourself. So I think absolutely that's a sensible thing. It does reduce soreness and inflammation. That's a definite positive.
It's interesting, isn't it, how sometimes we know the right advice and we forget to apply it to our own selves.
Very true.
Right. The frostbite and the hypothermia, the heart attack thing, I knew, I think I mentioned this last time when we first mentioned this topic. I knew about the issue with Marines who do cold water training for the UK Army. And when they jump into the water, they have a rope just in case there's an issue. I thought that was a heart attack. I hadn't linked it also to being that underwater gasp, as you put it.
Well, it might be the gasp. It might also be an arrhythmia. And what an arrhythmia will do, if it's a really fast and irregular one, will drop your blood pressure. So suddenly you're unable to respond, which may lead to a heart attack, but may just simply drop your blood pressure and therefore lead to a mini collapse, which, of course, in cold water conditions is a bad place to have one. So very sensible to rope themselves up.
Hence, don't do these things alone, like mountains.
And don't do it exactly on your own.
And don't do life alone. It's good to have people. Right. I think we've ticked off cold water therapy now.
Excellent. Well, next week, I want to move on to a new subject, which is there's been a lot of studies on how to live longer, with particular reference to some communities around the world that seem to have an enormous number of centenarians, people living beyond 100. And what have we got to learn from them? What's it all about? And so, again, this is relatively new stuff. There was even a TV program on this subject I watched a few weeks ago, and it got me thinking, they've got something. What is it, and how can we distill it? So I think that's where we'll go next week, if that's okay.
That sounds good. I love the news stories that occasionally pop up when they have something been married a really long time or alive a long time. And what's the secret?
What's the secret?
And I love some of the responses. I have a whiskey every morning, and you can see the journalist is thinking, that's not where I thought this was going to go. It's probably not tied into a long life, but it's just I love some of the stories and responses.
Yes, absolutely. So that's where I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of studying on that one. And same time next week we'll approach it and attack it.
Fantastic. There you go. Cold water. We've covered that one. If you've got any questions for Richard, we take topics mostly. So if you've got a topic that you've seen in the news recently, you think, is this really good? Is it bad? What's the real deal with this? You can send those to us, and Richard will go and research that for you. And then every so often, we'll also do a quick fire set of questions. So any questions that you would like to send to your family doctor, you can send to me to ask Richard. Just email us here in the studio, hello@pure247radio, hello@pure247radio.org. Richard, thank you as ever.
Just top up one thing that's quite interesting. Say your family doctor mean that I'm their family doctor. What's rather nice when I listen to Rick Warren, a famous American pastor on Premier Radio, he says, as your pastor, and this is going out around the world as your pastor. I'm thinking, Rick, that's a big job, pastoring the entire world. So you can think of me as your family doctor, and I'm certainly here to help. But don't forget, you should have your own proper family doctor.
Absolutely. I did actually say it a few times. I don't, I feel quite blessed. I have a weekly appointment with my GP, but it's, I do share it with the entire world. So I think that's okay.
Very nice.
Right. Thank you, Richard. And we'll be back next week for more.
Thanks, Andy. All the best.